You are welcome to HN What's Your Say, the #1 listening show where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly, real name, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as the R&B King. The manifestations of the R. Kelly case, and in particular, the RICO charges against him have caused the whole nation to try and better understand the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, also known as the RICO Act, which was added to the U.S. laws back in 1970, and later endorsed by President Reagan. As claimed by the government at that time, the RICO Act was solely meant to help net the kingpins involved in high-level racketeering, to galvanize illegal drug trade and related violence. While these criminals would be apprehended, they always proved difficult to pin down in the courts of law, as there was insufficient evidence to pin them to the crime, and all the government was left with were tax laws to try and make them accountable. What the RICO Act does is enable prosecutors to target the whole enterprise behind anyone who commits any of the stated crimes, and to subsequently indict any of these enterprise members to any of the crimes committed by any member of the organization. This allows for leaders of the gangs to be prosecuted. However, things took a turn in the 90s when the RICO Act was no longer a reserve for the mafias, but was adopted to crack down on numerous street gangs, especially those within the African American communities. This is how the RICO Act began to take shape as a law intended to prosecute people of color, when it was discovered that 86% of RICO cases involved African Americans, who steadily filled up America's prisons. The RICO Act clearly ignored the realities of those who resided in less privileged communities, and found themselves involved in gang-related activity as part of their social problems. The act allowed prosecutors to hold everyone responsible for the worst of crimes anyone in their social circle committed, technically assumed the gang had done. While the government used the RICO Act to target the gangs, they also essentially targeted the black communities, with the biggest takedown in 2006, when New York City was raided by security personnel more than ever before. So many people were taken into custody, and using the RICO Act were sentenced and imprisoned. Even those that were not involved in crime were taken in, just for belonging to these social groups. The RICO Act sort of says, do not hang out with a criminal, disregarding the fact that you may not really know that a member of your social group has any sort of criminal intentions. As the government prosecutes R. Kelly's case, their application of the infamous RICO Act has raised eyebrows as to how this law is being misused. So many people have picked interest in better understanding the act and what it means, especially for the African American community. Jennifer Bonjean, R. Kelly's new attorney on the case, has pointed out related cases in the past that involved white defendants, where the government did not apply the RICO Act and its subsequent charges. T has seen Bonjean ask, where are the RICO charges for prominent white defendants? This has further clarified on how this line of legislation is being used as a racial tool, only intended to criminalize and charge black people in the U.S. If R. Kelly is allegedly the leader of the gang, who are the prosecutors applying the RICO Act for? Especially if it was meant to enable them prosecute the supposed gang leader. Also to ask, should company staff have a new duty of watching their employers as though they are their keepers to ensure that they stay away from crime? Or should employees start running background checks on directors of the companies they wish to work for, just in case they are having problems in their relationship which may result in toxic separations? Should we assume that men with multiple wives and girlfriends should no longer be employers? Another thing R. Kelly fans need to know is whether by the word enterprise, the RICO Act meant companies and corporations registered by the government for business. That whenever a company staff or boss committed a crime, the entire company with its staff would become the illegal enterprise. I will not blame the people that made the RICO Act and swung it into action, for they may have never realized how it would eventually be misused and turned into a bogus enactment. Without knowing what they were doing, the legislators created a law that has no boundaries, not so different from the now common Public Order Management Act that has helped heads of government in most African countries to crash those with dissenting views, and successfully cling to power. It's hard and painful to admit the fact that even here in the US, we can create and maintain such boundless laws, and watch while they are misused by our own government to achieve selfish objectives that are slowly increasing the racial rift in our country. What beats my understanding is how time and again R. Kelly's attorney has brought this matter up, but had been repeatedly ignored by the judge Ann Donnelly, who seems more interested in sending R. Kelly to prison for as long as possible, rather than serve justice to both the defendant and the accusers. Even when it was made clear to her that R. Kelly deserves to be heard in Chicago before he can be sentenced, in order to prevent a conflict on interest during his mitigation submission, she insists on reading out his sentence as soon as possible. For a man who had already unfairly been in prison for approximately 3 years. What was the hurry for? What was so hard with waiting until the Chicago trial was done? According to Ayanga, quick to sentence can be an indicator that the government is worried about the digging Jennifer Bonjean is successfully doing into how the R. Kelly case was handled that may make the planned sentence rather unacceptable by the general public. They are probably concerned about the possibility of a new movement that will suggest unmute the R&B king. Clearly, they are not ready for this, and so, they will hijack the plane before it lands. There is a comment Judge Ann Donnelly made that made me think the sentence has already been predetermined. In her opposition statement to Bonjean's request to push forward, she said his accusers have waited for justice for so long, like she already knew the sentence will be the maximum possible, and acceptable by the accusers. She left no room for doubt that maybe the accusers will remain dissatisfied with what will transpire. According to Brianna, this RICO Act has been weaponized, and currently the guns are pointed at the black celebrities. R. Kelly is simply a victim of this poorly defined law that does not have a definite purpose, but can be used to send anyone to prison for as long as 25 years to life. I think it's time for America to review all its laws, which may not necessarily be sectarian in nature, but can be misused to that effect. Our country has come thus far, and cannot be the one still creating and enforcing such bogus enactments that can be easily misused. I do not expect this country to have room for any sort of unchecked power which such an act is providing to the judicial system. If you wish to take part in a live interview on this channel discussing any of these topics, let us know by emailing us on sashahnnewsroom@gmail.com for scheduling. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.